If you're a green card holder, is it safe if you're planning on traveling outside of the United States? We're going to be answering that question in today's video, so make sure to stick around. Hey everybody, U.S. immigration lawyer Michael Ashoori here. In recent weeks, we've been getting asked the question whether it's safe or not for lawful permanent residents to travel outside of the United States. And the answer is that it depends. And we're going to be addressing this in today's video. So again, we're going to jump right in. And the first thing that you should know is that as a lawful permanent resident, as a green card holder, your status in the United States is not guaranteed. There are certain things that could jeopardize your status, such as criminal activity, or even things such as prolonged travel outside of the United States. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of as a lawful permanent resident is that, again, if you leave the United States for prolonged periods of time, it can potentially jeopardize your status. Now, let's get into some specifics. If you leave the United States for over 180 days, but less than a year, upon your re-entry to the United States, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, can inquire with you. They can ask you questions to determine whether you've abandoned your green card. As a lawful permanent resident, you are required to intend to reside in the United States. And so if you've spent a prolonged period of time outside of the United States, specifically over 180 days, but less than a year, then CBP can ask you questions to determine whether or not you've abandoned your green card. And we'll take it a step further. If you leave the United States for a year or more, then your green card is no longer valid as a document to seek readmission to the United States. In many cases, if you've traveled outside of the United States for a year or more, if you want to re-enter, you'd likely have to apply for something called an SB1 returning resident visa. And with that, it has its own host of requirements. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of is that prolonged travel can jeopardize your status. So what is something that you can do about this? Well, there's something called a re-entry permit. A re-entry permit is a document that as a lawful permanent resident, as a green card holder, you can apply for it. And a re-entry permit, it looks similar to a passport. It's a different color, but it's a booklet with multiple pages, and it has your biographic information. It has a photo of you. And what a re-entry permit does is it creates a legal presumption that you did not intend to abandon your green card solely based on the length of time that you spent outside of the US. A re-entry permit is typically valid for 2 years. In some cases, it could be limited in its validity period for less than that, but it's oftentimes granted for a period of 2 years. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're a lawful permanent resident and you leave the United States without a re-entry permit, once you hit 1 year of time spent outside of the United States, your green card is no longer a valid document to seek readmission to the US. But if you have a re-entry permit, then in theory, you may be able to stay outside of the United States up to the validity period of that re-entry permit and then re-enter using the re-entry permit, assuming that it's not expired. And here's another thing that I want to mention. Or even if you don't plan on traveling for over 180 days, but you plan to travel frequently, it still might be a good idea to get a re-entry permit. Because I'm aware of situations where somebody gets a green card and they recently got the green card and then they take a trip outside of the United States shortly after receiving the green card. And that trip may not necessarily be for 6 months. It might be for 2 months or maybe 3 months. Again, I've heard of situations where that person that took that trip that was 2 to 3 months sought re-entry back to the United States and CBP still questioned them. And it's perhaps possibly because they took a relatively prolonged trip shortly after receiving your green card. It's not exactly clear why, because they didn't pass that 180-day mark, but they did have some degree of prolonged travel. So if you're somebody that knows that you have the frequent need to travel for extended periods of time, it may be in your best interest to apply for a re-entry permit. Now, another thing, we talked about this earlier, certain issues with crimes can also make you inadmissible to the United States. So if you have any sort of issues with crimes or any sort of criminal background of any kind, it would be in your best interest to consult with an immigration attorney before leaving the US, because in certain cases, that criminal activity could render you inadmissible when you're seeking re-entry to the United States after being abroad. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of. If you're curious to learn more about re-entry permits and the SB1 returning resident visa, we have more information. We have more videos on our YouTube page, so you can definitely check that out. So another thing that I want to talk about is potential upcoming travel bans. And this is something to definitely be aware of. On President Trump's first day in office, he signed an executive order titled Protecting the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats. And in this executive order, he tasks various government agencies with putting together a list of countries that have various security deficiencies where the United States can't properly vet their citizens for purposes of granting them immigration benefits. And in recent days, we've come to learn that this is likely going to result in a multi-tiered form of immigration restrictions for people from certain countries. And we see here that there's going to be a red tier where people are fully prohibited from entering the United States. It's going to be full travel restrictions. And I don't believe we know at this time if there's any exceptions to this or whether or not it will include lawful permanent residents, green card holders. But it's important to know that this travel ban is likely going to be enacted at some point. Again, there's going to be this red tier where people are fully prohibited from entering the United States. And the countries on that list, we believe, are going to include Afghanistan, Bhutan, Cuba, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen. And then there's an orange tier where the countries listed in this orange tier are going to face additional scrutiny and additional vetting procedures. And those countries we believe to be Belarus, Eritrea, Haiti, Laos, Myanmar, Pakistan, Russia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Turkmenistan. And again, the countries in this orange tier, they're going to face additional vetting measures. Then we have this yellow tier, and the yellow tier consists mostly of various African countries. And in this yellow tier, these countries are going to essentially have 60 days to address the vetting concerns of the US, or they're going to risk being placed in either the red list or the orange list. So that's a little bit of information about this upcoming travel ban. We don't know whether or not this is going to apply to green card holders. I suspect that it should not apply to green card holders, but I just wanted to make you aware of it in case your country is on one of these lists and you're planning on traveling. At this moment, we don't know the specific details of who's impacted by this, but we feel that you should know about it. So there you have it. If you're asking yourself the question, is it safe? I'm a green card holder and I'm wondering, is it safe to leave the United States? Well, these are some of the important factors to consider. And I hope you learned a lot from this video and you feel that you may be at risk of facing challenges upon your re-entry, you should definitely make sure to consult with an experienced immigration lawyer. We just wanted to provide you with some helpful information in today's video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next video.